NFL Week 1 is in the books, is behind us officially. Week 2 is now here, and it kicks off with a great game tonight on Thursday Night Football between the Commanders and Packers. Two teams, Kevin, that people are looking at as legit contenders in the NFC. Probably as of right now, I think most people would say, after what we saw the Lions look like, probably the top two contenders to the Eagles in the NFC. Maybe throw the Rams in that bunch as well. But we're going to dive into Thursday Night Football and then also preview the other four best games of the week. We got an Eagles-Chiefs rematch of the Super Bowl. We got Sunday Night Football between two young quarterbacks in the Falcons and the Vikings with Penix and McCarthy. And then we got a doubleheader on Monday night as well. Going to our locks of the week, our dogs of the day. A lot to get into, and our TD parlay as well. So, Kev, how'd you like week 1? What was kind of your main takeaway and ready for week 2 now?
Yeah, no, week 1 was awesome. I just sat on the couch all day Sunday watching, eating some food. It was awesome. I look forward to doing the same thing this Sunday.
For sure, no doubt about that. And as we said, a Super Bowl rematch on Sunday afternoon as well should be a fun one. But we start tonight on Thursday Night Football. Two legit teams in the NFC. I got the Commanders at 1-0. Beat the Giants this weekend. I don't think necessarily looked great. That was more so indicative of maybe what we're going to see from the Giants this year. But they go to Lambeau to play the Packers, who had one of the best wins of the week, absolutely dominating the Lions. They're 1-0 as well. We got an 8:15 kickoff tonight on Thursday Night Football on Amazon. Packers, 3.5-point favorite, over-under sitting at 48.5. Do the Packers get it done and cover at home?
Yeah, I think they do tonight. I'm going Packers 27, Commanders 21. So Packers cover the 3.5, under 48.5 hidden. The Packers looked awesome in week 1, like you said. And then also, like you said, the Commanders were able to beat the Giants relatively easily. The Packers win is obviously way more impressive with it being against Detroit, who a lot of people had coming into this year as a real Super Bowl contender. And I'm going to go with the Packers as I think they have a defense that's going to be able to stop the Commanders' rushing attack. That has been very impressive. Going all the way back to last year, they finished third in yards last year. And then they also put up 220 yards last week in week 1 against the Giants. And the Lions are known for having a great rushing attack. And last week, the Packers were able to hold them in check with only 46 yards. The Commanders' defense, I think, will have their hands full with a Commanders' offense that looked very good in week 1. And they're also just super deep at the wide receiver position. Jordan Love last week was able to hit 8 different receivers on his first 8 throws. And then in total, 10 players ended up catching a ball last week. I think for that, I think the Packers win this one as they look to assert themselves firmly as a Super Bowl contender here.
Yeah, that's one of my main kind of like, it's nice to have balance. It's nice to be able to throw the ball around the yard to a bunch of different guys. But one of my like main things with the Packers, while I'm not fully bought in on them yet, is they don't have kind of that elite guy at the spot. Like we saw so many times last year, like the Browns game specifically sticks out to me. Eagles needed a first down late in the game. They find a way to get the ball to A.J. Brown. They also got Devontae in there. I'm taking AJ and Devontae over any other receivers on this Packers roster. They just don't have like a guy to me that really sticks out. Look at the Bucs with Mike Evans, Ibuka. I think Godwin even. I'm taking any of those guys over the Packers receivers. Amon-Ra St. Brown I'm taking over any of the Packers receivers. So it's nice to have a good group, a balanced group. But I think push comes to shove when you need a big play. Who do you really turn to if you're that offense? If Josh Jacobs isn't the option out of the backfield, that's kind of the main thing holding me back with the Packers. But I really like them in this one tonight at home. Short week, always kind of favor the home team in that spot, especially when it outright. But in this spot, Matt LaFleur has been great historically since he's been the head coach of the Packers since 2019. 28-17 against the spread as a home favorite since taking over in Green Bay in 2019. That's covering at 62.2%. They're a 3.5-point favorite at home tonight. So that fits the spot there. That is the best record in the NFL over that time. So I think you kind of back the data there on a short week. A Packers team that is young, the youngest roster in the NFL. You're playing the oldest roster in the NFL and the Commanders. And I know it's not week 8, week 9, middle of the season type thing, but still, it's coming off a short week. Your first game, you're probably a little banged up, a little bruised up. I think that could go against the Commanders in this one. So I like the under too. I was very impressed by the Packers defense and the way they flew around last week. Excited to see what they can do against Jaden Daniels, but I like the under in this one as well. I'm going to go Packers 24, Commanders 20. So Packers cover that 3.5, and we'll go under 48.5 there. All right, Sunday now, game of the week in the NFL on Fox. The Eagles at 1-0 go to Kansas City to play the 0-1 Chiefs. 425 kick on Fox. Eagles sitting at a 1.5 point favorite over under 45.5. Let's not forget, Eagles beat the Chiefs in the Super Bowl last year, 40-22, and we're up 40-6 at one point.
Yeah, I don't think this game is going to be like that, but I'm still going with the Eagles to win 24-21. Eagles minus 1.5, under 45.5. I think it's going to be a close, low scoring game. The Eagles defense did look vulnerable at times last week against the Cowboys, but ultimately that was without Jalen Carter. And then they also, in the end, only let up 20 points to a Cowboys offense that coming into the year was expected to be able to just score a ton of points because they do have a pretty good offense down there in Dallas. I just don't think the Chiefs have enough offensive firepower to scare me. Rice is obviously still out from his injury last year. And then Worthy, it seems like he's probably going to be able to go, but definitely not going to be 100%. Everything I was reading said he's probably going to be wearing some sort of brace on that shoulder. And then for the Eagles, I think Jalen looked very good in week one. I expect him to have just another overall solid game this week. Nothing out of the ordinary for him, just playing good, sound football. So I'm going Eagles 24, Chiefs 21.
I think it's just such a hard spot for the Eagles. At the end of the day, I think that they're the better team. I think they're going to have the better regular season record and very well could win the Super Bowl again. But this is just such a tough spot, especially with the Chiefs starting 0-1. You have to think at the end of the day, we're going to see Kansas City in the playoffs. If they lose this game, the stats say that it's going to be pretty hard for them to do it. Just 2 of 21 teams that have started 0-2 since 2021 have made the playoffs. So 19 of 21 teams that have started 0-2 have missed the playoffs since 2021, the 2021 season. So this is a big week for a lot of teams to avoid starting 0-2 to give them statistically a better chance of making the playoffs. And this is a spot too. Andy Reid has been great, and since taking over with the Chiefs back in 2013, the Chiefs are 24-20 straight up as an underdog. That's the best record in the NFL as a straight up underdog over that time as well. Home opener for Kansas City, revenge on their mind from that Super Bowl. I don't think the Eagles are going to go in there scared. I don't think the Eagles are going to go in there afraid, but I just think it's such a tough spot for the Eagles, which is why I was very kind of like must-win territory last week, I think, against the Cowboys, because it's a very tough 4-game stretch to start the season for Philadelphia with division rival with the Cowboys, with all the Super Bowl noise from last year, the Chiefs obviously this week, and then next week they host the Rams, and then they go to Tampa Bay, who has owned them over the past few seasons. So I think if the Eagles are able to walk out of the first 4 games at 2-2, I would probably sign up for that. 3-1 would be awesome. 4-0 would be insane, but I just think going on the road here, it's a game that I think is close down to the wire, but just too tough of a spot for the Eagles. I think that the Chiefs are able to kind of muck this one up a bit, and they win one of those classic late game, 20 seconds left, Mahomes gets them in the field goal range or something like that. So I'm going to go 23-20 Chiefs plus 1.5, under 45.5. Will I be surprised if the Eagles go in there and win it all? No, but history I think is kind of on the Chiefs side of this one. All right, we go to Sunday Night Football now. No games that we break down in the 1 o'clock slate this week, but we have a Sunday night game and 2 Monday night games. We got the Falcons at 0-1. We're in one of the better games of the week last week with the Bucks. They lose at the end. They go to Minnesota to play the 1-0 Vikings, who looked like a completely different team from half 1 to half 2. 8:20 kick on Sunday Night Football on NBC. Vikings 4-point favorite, over under 44.5. JJ McCarthy did not practice today. His wife had a baby. I don't think that's going to impact his game status, but you never know. But he should be in the lineup come Sunday night. And he really impressed me on Monday night against the Bears in that second half. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Kev?
Yeah, I think the Vikings win a close one by 1 point here, 24-23. So the Falcons do end up covering +4 over 44.5. I think the Falcons will play in a lot of close games this year because they do have a really talented offense and their defense has improved slightly on paper. I'm just not going to be picking them a whole lot to win a lot of these close games. And then against the Vikings, JJ McCarthy looked really, really bad for a majority of the game Monday night, but he did lead a huge comeback. And then after the game, it just seemed like everyone in the locker room was really pumped for him and really did believe in him that he was going to get the job done. So I think that could be a huge confidence booster for him going into week 2. And then for the Falcons, Michael Penix threw the ball 42 times in week 1. I don't know if that's the winning formula for the Falcons. It just doesn't seem like it to me. Bijan only had 12 carries, and then Algier had 10. I think Bijan needs to be more in like the 18 to 20 carries per game, and then also getting his normal 5 to 7 touches in the passing game. Because when he gets the ball in his hands, it kind of just jumps off the screen at you that he's just so much better than the majority of the other players on the field. And until I see the Falcons put it all together, I'm not going to be picking them in close games. So I'm going with the Vikings here.
Yeah, Falcons, I think, are going to be one of like the funnest teams to watch this year, where they're always going to be in some chaotic games. Like even last week, that game had no business of being that crazy down the stretch, and Michael Penix has two wild runs to they put the Falcons in position to win that game. Younghoe Koo obviously misses that field goal that would have tied it up and sent it to overtime, I believe. But just a team that always seems to be playing in some chaotic games. I think there's a spot where I'm just going to go with the home squad. If this was in Atlanta, I'd probably go with them. I was very impressed with what the Vikings looked like in the second half, and obviously you were kind of touching on it too. What it looked like was a locker room that was full of believers in JJ McCarthy, and they kind of never swayed from that poor first half. This game was in Atlanta. I would probably go with them. I'm still not overly impressed with the Vikings. I think they're probably going to be closer to a 500, like a 9-8 type of team than what they were last year with 14 wins, or getting up there to 12, 13 wins and competing for the NFC North. But at home, I think I will take them to win it outright, but I will go with the Falcons to cover plus the 4. And I do think we see a little bit of points in this one. You got two young quarterbacks. You got a lot of playmakers in this game. I'm going to go with Vikings 27-24. So Falcons plus 4 over 44.5 there. All right, now we go to Monday night, and I was listening to part of my take the other day. Joe Buck said I think there's 4 Monday night doubleheaders this year, potentially even 5. So not the only time you're going to see this year. But Monday Night Football, first game of the night, we'll touch on Bucks 1-0. We just talked about a crazy win over the Falcons last week at the Texans 0-1, who had one of the more disappointing games last week, only putting up 9 points. 7 o'clock kick on ABC. Texans are a 2.5-point favorite here at home, despite that frustrating, disappointing loss last week. Over under sitting at 42.5.
Yeah, I think the frustration continues here for the Texans. I'm going Bucks 27, Texans 21. So the Bucks cover the 2.5 that they're given, and then over 42.5. The Texans offense just looks like it's kind of stuck in mud. CJ doesn't have enough time. The run game isn't doing a whole lot to help them. And then Nico Collins isn't really anywhere to be found. I do like the Texans D, and I think that will keep them competitive in a lot of games this year. And then CJ Stroud's also still obviously really talented, so he's always going to be able to make some plays on his own, which will keep him in games. But overall, the Bucks offense looked really good in week 1. Baker was able to throw three TDs and no picks. And anytime your QB does that, you're just going to have a great shot at winning the game. The run game was a little tough sledding in week 1 for the Bucks, but I think if they're able to get that right, this offense should really start humming. And then I think it could end up potentially being a long year for the Texans, and then the Bucks here move to 2-0.
Yeah, Bucks are my Super Bowl team. I'm a huge believer in them, and even last week, I think you kind of saw they started out slow, but they figured it out kind of as the game went on. I just love Baker leading that team, and I haven't been historically a big Baker guy, but I think what he's done to rewrite his career in Tampa has been super impressive. And once that team's fully healthy on the offensive side, it's really going to get humming. But this is kind of just reminds me of that spot that I was talking about with the Eagles and the Chiefs, where I have a hard time envisioning the Texans not being in the playoffs, whether it's winning that AFC South or being a wild card team. I think when we go back to the team starting 0-2, especially since this playoff expansion started, it looks very hard to make the playoffs. 19 of 21 teams since 2021 have missed the playoffs since starting 0-2. I just have a hard time picturing this Texans team missing it. And the Bucks, I think, kind of escaped last week with a win. Falcons easily could have won that game. Bucks had some late game heroics. The fortunate that the Falcons missed a field goal as well. So it's a spot where the Bucks didn't look that great. I think the Bucks are still going to be coming up to speed. Texans need a win here. I think there's a lot of emphasis on this one, and for them too, home opener. And I think the spread is kind of telling you something there too. If you watch both games last weekend and you put these two teams on a neutral, you would be like, all right, the Bucks are definitely favored in this one. But the Texans still being a favorite at home here, I think that's a little bit telling. So I'm going to go with the Texans to win 27-23. After scoring 9 points last week, I think they can wake up a little bit on this Bucs secondary. So give me Texans minus 2.5, and then I will go with the over of 42.5 as well. All right, last game of the week. Don't know how much I'll watch of this one because it's so late at night at 10 o'clock. pick, maybe watch the first half before going to bed. But a game where two of the more impressive teams from week one, the Chargers at 1-0, they get the big win down in Brazil over the Chiefs. They travel to Vegas to play the 1-0 Raiders, who I think were one of the more impressive teams. And kind of as the day went on, talked myself into them potentially being a playoff team. 10 o'clock kick on ESPN. Chargers, though, 3.5-point favorite here on the road, over under 46.5. I mean, side note, too, the coaching kind of rivalry in this one. Jim Harbaugh, Pete Carroll have bad blood all the way back to college. Now they're in the same division. First matchup in the NFL between these two. Looking forward to this game. Thoughts on if the Raiders can pull off the outright upset, Kev?
Yeah, I am picking the Raiders here. I'm going Raiders 21, Chargers 17. So Raiders plus 3.5, under 46.5. This is the game I struggled with the most to pick. Herbert looked great in week one, but are we going to start seeing that consistently? I do have my doubts about that. I'm going with the Raiders because I believe Gentry can do more. He averaged just 2 yards a carry on 19 attempts last week. And then my Raiders pick here is also dependent on Brock Bowers being able to play. The long week will give him an extra day to rest here. He looked awesome when he was out there last week, and Geno seems to really trust him. Overall, I think these are just two teams that I think it's going to take a couple of weeks for us to figure out who they really are. So I'm just going with the home team here, and that being the Raiders.
Yeah, I'm kind of with you in that regard tomorrow as well, or on Monday night as well, where I think if you reverse it, if the Chargers are home, I'm probably picking them. Like, this is a division where I think realistically everyone's going to win their home games and everyone's going to lose their road games. Like, I think we see all these teams kind of go 3-3, and at the end of the year, you're in tiebreaker mode with teams going 10-7, 11-6, trying to make the playoffs. Didn't really get to watch that much of the Chargers game, but from everything that we heard, Justin Herbert looked awesome, but I was able to watch a lot of this Raiders game, and I think that offense is actually going to be pretty fun this year with Chip Kelly dialing up the plays. I've kind of slept on Geno over the past few years, but he just continues to produce and continues to play well. I think he has arguably the best player that he's ever played with now in Brock Bowers, who I think we can all agree, or at least make the argument that he is right up there as the top tight end in the league right now. I think Gentry's going to be a star. I think it's a good offensive line in front of him, some speed at the receiver spots with Jacoby Myers. I think that's a Raiders team that could be dangerous and be like a 10-7 type team, probably get in to the playoffs in the wild card. I think this one comes down to the wire, and I think we see some points between these two quarterbacks. But I'm going to go with the Raiders here at home. Plus 3.5, I think, is a lot. I definitely like them to cover that. But I think they're going to win this outright. 28-27, Raiders win. So Raiders plus 3.5, over 46.5 there. All right, let's go to our touchdown parlay now. We did this last week. We'll do it every week. We'll pick one guy from the primetime game. So last week we had the option of Thursday, Friday, Sunday night, and then Monday night. This week we got a Thursday, we got Sunday, and 2 Monday. We were one leg away from cashing last week. George Pickens was the only one to not cash. I think it was I had Jalen and Bucky Irving. And who was your pick other than Pickens, Kev? Gentry, I think.
It was Gentry, yeah.
So George Pickens is the one leg last week that doesn't hit. We'll run it back this week. 4 legs, one on Sunday afternoon, one prime time. I'll give my Sunday afternoon one first. I'm going to go with Kyren Williams, minus 155 versus Titans. Listen, I think this one's pretty simple. When they're within the 5-yard line, every time you turn on red zone, it seems like Kyren Williams is getting in there. They have an old quarterback, a statue-type quarterback in Matthew Stafford that doesn't run the ball at all. I don't think you're going to see him get much sneaks. Kyren Williams for 2 years in a row now has been that guy on the goal line. So Kyren Williams minus 155 on Sunday versus the Titans. I like him to get in.
Yeah, my Sunday pick, I'm going Puka Nacua against the Titans. Last week he had 10 receptions, 11 targets, so he's getting plenty of opportunities. I think he gets into the end zone this week.
All right, and then the primetime game, I'm going to go to Monday night, the first game on Monday night. Bucky Irving at plus 100 there. Scored last week. He had 8 touchdowns last season, and over the second half of the season, he became the main guy in that backfield. He's going to get the touches, just kind of like the guy that you're going to pick, where he can score out of the backfield, catching the ball, but also obviously is a threat running the ball. And another player, he gets all the touches kind of right around the goal line. So Bucky Irving plus 100 on Monday night.
Yeah, you kind of beat me to the point there on why I picked Bijan Robinson minus 160 Sunday night. He can do it on the ground, through the air. Last week it was through the air. Maybe this week it will be on the ground. We'll see, but he's minus 160 for a reason. I think Bijan gets in this week.
Yeah, so these odds have adjusted a little bit since we made our picks a few days ago. Kyron's minus 185 now, Puka plus 125, Bijan minus 155, and Bucky minus 105. You parlay those together though, plus 1152. $10 on that wins you $125. So good luck to anyone placing that wager. We were one leg away last week. DraftKings though offering that ghost leg. If you put that in with the ghost leg last week, you would have won. So. Dog of the day now, our favorite underdog of the week. There wasn't that many screaming on the board this week for me for both dog of the day or lock of the week. I was kind of tempted to go with the Raiders plus 3.5 for my dog. But since we picked that game, I went a little different avenue. Jets plus 7 versus the Bills. I think the Jets looked very impressive last week. Offense definitely looked impressive. And I think the Bills, coming off of that crazy game last week, crazy comeback, kind of put everything that they wanted, put everything that they had into that game against the Jets. I think it's tough to come back from that one. Now you got to go on the road. I'm not saying the Jets are going to win this one outright. I could see it being a very similar game to what it was last week, but to keep it within 7 points, I like that for sure. I think this is a field goal game. So give me Jets plus 7 this week for my dog of the day.
My dog of the day, I'm going Jags plus 3.5 versus the Bengals. The Bengals actually won a week one game last week, but they still didn't instill a ton of confidence in me. A 1-point victory against the Browns with the offense really not looking great isn't super inspiring. And the Jags rushing attack looked really good against the Panthers last week. So I think the Jags plus 3.5 against the Bengals is my dog of the day.
All right, our lock of the week now, our favorite play of the week. My lock of the week, I'm going to go Pats, Dolphins under 43.5. As I said earlier about that Raiders and Patriots game, I watched a lot of that. I feel like that was on Red Zone a lot, and I was not very pleased with what the Pats looked like. I've been very confused all offseason why people have been putting them back in the playoffs. Like, I think they're very pedestrian on offense. I think they're going to take some time, certainly, to get going. They did not impress me at all last week. And the Dolphins, say what you want about them, but they looked lifeless. They still got a lot of talent. They could wake up at any moment. But that's a team that just looked like they didn't want to be there last week. I think these are two teams that are going to struggle to put up points in this one. I think we're looking at like a 20-17 type of ball game. So give me Pats, Dolphins under 43.5 as my lock of the week.
Yeah, my lock of the week, I'm going Niners minus 3 versus Saints. I'm just going to continue to bet against the Saints, even with Mac Jones at QB for the Niners.
Yeah, that's an interesting one as well. Ravens this week, using that as my survivor pick, double-digit favorite at home against the Browns after starting out 0-1. I think they get that one done. All right, that'll do it for the Week 2 NFL preview here on Beef Up Front. We'll be back next week for Week 3. Interested to see what teams start 0-2 and fall into that hole, potentially not making the playoffs. And also what teams advance to 2-0. And a few teams obviously go into 1-1, but another week to sit back, watch some football, and watch a great game, hopefully on Sunday, for the Super Bowl rematch with the Eagles and the Chiefs. We will talk to you all next week. Please like, subscribe, and we'll talk soon.